On today's show, our guest is George Deeb. George is a managing partner and Chicago-based Red Rocket Ventures. Red Rocket Ventures is a growth consulting, executive coaching, shared executive, and financial advisory firm. George has consulted with over 750 startups since launching Red Rocket and works to help B2C and B2B entrepreneurs navigate the growth, fundraising, and other business issues. He has published 101 startup lessons in Entrepreneur's Handbook and contributes to Forbes, Entrepreneur, and the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for being here today, George.
Oh, it's my pleasure, John. Thanks for the invite.
I know you're really busy, so I'm just going to get right into it. And if you can just let the audience members know a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you are, and what do people know you by today?
Yeah, perfect. I'm a serial entrepreneur. My first experience with entrepreneurship was in Chicago. I was the founder and CEO of an adventure travel website called iExplore. Became the #1 adventure travel website. We had a deep partnership with National Geographic. Was there for about 10 years and got that business sold to a big European travel company called TUI. And then from there, I've been actively involved in early stage startups. I've been the CEO of 2 or 3 other businesses, have been consulting through the Red Rocket business where I've had, good success with the Red Rocket blog and getting a wide base of entrepreneurs trying to get, how do they get their businesses off the ground and kind of learn how to scale their company. So today, I am recently acquired a business called Restaurant Furniture Plus. It's a B2B e-commerce business, and then trying to scale that business just like I scaled my previous company. So that's kind of a high-level answer.
No, that's amazing. So before you started your own business, I read that you were also an investment banker. So
Yep.
How did you get that itch to start your own company and why?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you're an investment banker and you're taking around a bunch of executive teams to raise capital, I could either be on the transaction side and be on their IPO team, or I could be the entrepreneur that is actually getting taken public and having a big liquidity event. So to me, I did that so many times that I said I really want to try my hands at being an entrepreneur and building my own company and having some sort of success like my clients were having.
No, that's amazing. So was it an idea that you kind of just came across, or were there people that kind of guided you, pushed you? Like, how did you get going, really, like get started?
Yeah, so for that first business, the adventure travel business, I was a diehard adventure traveler myself. I've been traveled all over the world on exotic destinations and doing interesting things. And in the late 90s, my high school friends wanted to plan a reunion to kind of get together and do a trip together. And we wanted to go hike summit Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. Yep. And at the time, this is well before the internet and places to find information. And I put in hours and hours of work trying to find a expedition company that could help us. And I said, there has to be a better way. And it was that experience of planning that adventure trip that I said, there's a business here to be built, and let's build it under the iExplore brand. So that's sort of how it came together.
That's amazing. I mean, that's always, I love hearing those stories because it's like your passion, right? And it's like a hobby that you always wanted to do. And was this more like you kind of gave up your job to do it full time, or was it on the side? Like, because you were probably getting used to a decent salary, built a lot of relationships. Like, how did you come about quitting that piece of your career to do this?
Yeah, it's a really insightful question. When you're an investment banker and you have those golden handcuffs, they call them, it's really hard to kind of let go. Yeah. But I knew that if I was going to be successful, it needed to be a full-time focus. So, I took the last bonus check that year and decided I was going to cut the relationship and leave a lot of good friends and experience behind, and relocated from New York City to Chicago to get the business up and running.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So in terms of like the early years of starting that business to growing it and scaling it, like where did this business knowledge come from? Did you have like coaches, mentors, classes, group conferences? How did you learn to grow that business?
Well, it's interesting. Certain of the skills I kind of acquired over time. I mean, being an investment banker taught you how to deal with the financial markets and how do you raise capital and how do you pitch investors and some of the stuff you need to be successful as an entrepreneur. A lot of the other skill sets, I was a first-time CEO. First-time CEOs make lots of mistakes. So you want to surround yourself by smart people that have been there and done it before. So I was actively involved networking with the local Chicago community, and anytime I had a problem or a challenge I needed help with, I knew who to tap to kind of help me through those problems.
No, that's amazing. Like I'm still learning. I'm still making mistakes. And, I've been doing what I'm doing for the last 6 years. And I totally get where you're coming from. And it's only the last couple years that I've started reaching out, networking with other successful business owners and entrepreneurs. But it's always that fear factor of not knowing what they're going to say about you, right? And I found that entrepreneurs and other business owners are the most generous, most loving kind of people that want to support other like-minded people. Like this whole community is, you may think it's, your competition or they are so busy, but they're so giving.
Well, I think they know the pain that you're running through. They've lived through that pain themselves. So to the extent they can, pay it forward and give it back to the community, it kind of moves the ecosystem forward. So if the ecosystem is successful, then everybody will be successful therein, and a rising tide will raise all ships.
No, that's amazing, because I've noticed it over the last couple of years, and now I'm more engulfed in slowly giving back my time as well, right? Because I feel and I want to impact a larger group of people, right? And as long as someone's reaching out to me, I feel like I have some insight that I can give and help them move along their process and journey.
Well, that's sort of why I launched Red Rocket, right? I mean, I felt that as an experienced executive at early stage companies, I had a lot to give back to the community.
Exactly.
And, what started off with 10 blog posts and how-to lessons to kind of teach entrepreneurs, years and years later, it's now hundreds of lessons and 3 published books, and it's all given away for free to kind of give back to the community.
That's amazing. I love those stories, because until you take that first step, and there's a lot of doubt, and it's all self-inflicted too, right? Like you actually did something about it. And all these entrepreneurs and dreamers out there, they just got to take action, right? And do something. And I love these stories about, building something and helping others, because that's what life is about. Like you get more passion and you get, way more out of life when you see other people become successful or you help them along the way, right?
Well, the fear is taking that first step, right? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns when you're in a comfortable job and you've got a salary and you're in a rhythm and it's comfortable for you. People are averse to change.
Yeah.
But, once you take that first step and you realize how great entrepreneurship can really be, and how much more rewarding it is, and how much you're learning, and how much you're taking your business to new heights, it really has a great payback.
That's amazing. So growing up, was there someone you kind of looked up to? Because, being an entrepreneur or a business owner is completely different than just working a 9-to-5 job or picking a career path, right? Was there someone that you kind of dreamed to be or push you along the ways?
Well, I mean, there were several people in my family that had experience with entrepreneurship. My dad had launched his own companies and had some success there, and I worked with him in his business for a while. My uncle was an entrepreneur. He had success scaling his business. So, I had exposure to it around the Thanksgiving dinner table. So that was part of it. The second part of it was, I just think entrepreneurship was built into my DNA from very, very early age. Yeah. When I was in high school, I launched a kind of a handyman service for my local community to make some extra money. When I was in college, I had a comic book collectibles business that we were selling collectible comic books to make some money. So I understood from those experiences a little bit about how to build companies, but I didn't get really serious and professionalized until I got later in my career.
No, I love those stories too, because I look back now and I'm like, did I really want to be an entrepreneur? And then over the years, I was a newspaper boy. I had all these side hustles. And then I actually were very passionate about those little things, more so than my real job, right? And then I kind of took that on as like, this is something I got to do. But when it's in your DNA, or there's people that surround yourself with that are also entrepreneurs, it's so much easier to kind of follow their footsteps or ask for advice and get guidance, right? Especially someone you can trust, right? And that really helps with the communities that you've kind of built, and what, all entrepreneurs should be really doing too, like surround yourself with like-minded people, create like a gathering or a network that you can support each other.
Yeah, for sure. It's very much about surrounding yourself with talent, because entrepreneurs are often lacking in a lot of different skill sets, and to the extent they can surround themselves by people that have been there and done that before, the higher odds of success their own startup will have, because then you're not reinventing the wheel, you're not making the same mistakes that scores of entrepreneurs before you have made, and you're actually learning from them and kind of taking their experiences and applying it to your business.
No, that's amazing. So I know I read that you have helped over 750 startups. So are you actively putting money into a lot of these startups, or are you more of an advisory role? Like what kind of role are you playing?
Yeah, so the Red Rocket business model really has a couple pieces to it. So the first piece is, a lot of entrepreneurs don't necessarily have the right strategy for how they build a business plan or a sales and marketing plan to kind of take their product to market. Yep. So, we help them think through those strategies and kind of scale, their scaling plan, right? So that's part one. Part two is, in addition to the strategy, oftentimes they need execution against those strategies. They don't have the right people on staff to kind of execute those plans. Gotcha. So they're looking for a fractional chief marketing officer or head of sales to help them build their teams, their process, their budgets, and actually execute the plan that came out of the strategy. It's the second piece. And the third piece is, they often need capital, right? So Red Rocket plays connect the dots to the most logical venture capital firms or angel investors that make sense for that particular story. We've got a deep Rolodex of relationships that we kind of tie to. Now, sometimes we'll make our direct investments ourselves. Those are fewer and far between. We tend to do more majority control kind of investments. Gotcha. Instead of minority venture investments. Yep. But for the right thing, we would. And it's just a function of how much we like the story and how much we think we can help the story.
Do you typically invest in people or the actual idea concept? Because I've been going to a lot of these startup events and the raising of VC and whatnot, and it's funny, right? Hearing from both sides, and really it's your money, right? So how do you pick and choose what to invest in and how you invest?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, people are the most important thing to any startup, right? So, if I had the option of investing in an A+ team working on a B+ idea, or a B+ team working on an A+ idea, I would much rather do the A+ team. Gotcha. Right? Because they're the ones with the experience that have been through the battles before. They're gonna turn that B+ idea into something even greater than a B+ idea. Gotcha. Whereas if you took the B+ team that's still learning and stubbing their toes, you got a much higher odds that they're not going to be able to make through the clutter that's going to hit them as they try to navigate the choppy waters.
No, I totally agree. So some of the biggest challenges you kind of faced over the years in your own venture and your existing and mistakes, can you share some of them, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, let's talk about the biggest mistake first, and then I'll talk about the biggest challenge. So, the biggest mistakes are when you're building your team and you're building your investor base and your board of directors. Yep. You want to make sure that you've got the right people around the table that have the right skill sets to really be successful for your business, yep, particularly at the stage in which you're growing. So, for example, I remember in my iExplore days, we had a bunch of Fortune 500 executives around the table, that I was going after the brand. I said, well, wow, if I could get a head of marketing from Kellogg to come work for my startup, it's a great brand name. It must have a ton of experience. The same thing for our head of technology coming from Oracle, or head of operations coming from a big brand name. The reality is, once you get working into a Fortune 500 company, the mindset is completely different, right? The budgets are completely different. Their go-to-market strategies are completely different. And it's much harder to roll up your sleeves and do the job yourself on a shoestring budget and actually make it work for a startup. So, and the same thing goes on the capital side. I was going after big brand name investors. Mm-hmm. I had investors like Soros and Madison Dearborn and the Chicago Tribune all involved with the business, but they weren't really early stage investors. They were later stage investors that were trying to play the dot-com boom. And none of them really had experience on how do you take a piece of paper business at the very early seed stage and make it successful. So surrounding yourself by talent that has experience in the size of business that you are to give it the maximum odds of success. So that is an example of one of the mistakes we made and what I've learned from that. The second thing, in terms of one of the biggest challenges I had to deal with, when I was at iExplorer, we had to get through September 11th, 2001. I mean, that was like torture. I was in the travel business where, terrorists were using airplanes as missiles, right? So nobody really wanted to be traveling at that time, and the travel industry took a huge hit. So we had a nice, tremendous high growth trajectory. Everything was great. We were off to the races. We were in the middle of raising our final round of venture capital to carry us through profitability. And then September 11th hit and everything fell apart. And, no revenues were coming in and the capital didn't close and all the challenges on, oh my God, how are we going to get through this really crisis situation? So, we had a very loyal base of employees that really loved what they were doing. They knew it was going to be choppy waters for a few months until we could figure it out. And we patiently waited for the markets to come back and the investors to return and started building iExplorer a second time after the market settled down. So that was a really torturous experience. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but we really learned a lot and taught me that it's really about passion and persistence to kind of get you through the tough times.
Yeah, and as an entrepreneur, there's never a steep, steady growth curve. Like there's always these peaks and valleys, right? And this is what you'll learn in business, in life, in the journey of everything that you're kind of pursuing, right? As much as you want to be that straight line curve, it's never going to be. And those setbacks, just don't let it get to you. And it's hard to say on this podcast, but if you truly think about the positives and how to overcome them and try to prevent that from happening and things that kind of keep you going motivated, right? Like stay positive because these setbacks, they can easily, close your business or your dream or make you go into depression and, all these other factors, right? And it's the mental game too.
Well, it's getting through those rainy days, and the advice I give entrepreneurs is that don't plan so tightly that you don't have a cushion, right? So if you think you need $1 million to fund your business, well, raise $1.5 million just so you have a cushion to lean on, so that if the market gets tight and you can't raise new capital or your business turns soft and you hit a blip in the road, you've got that rainy day fund to kind of get you through those tough times.
Especially in the startup environment and community, right? It all depends on the mindset of the individual too, because they perceive that they need the biggest, newest, best stuff. Think about it as a bootstrap kind of individual, because at the beginning, you should be profitable or try to go after either market share, gain audience, client, whatever it is, right? But think about it as your own money, because that's how you want to pitch, right? To show that you actually have sales and you've been foot on the ground. And that's the biggest thing that you have to really position yourself. Do the work, get sales, show there's opportunity, and there's a lot of, good signals out there in the marketplace that people are willing to commit, right, and buy.
But you're hitting the most important point, is that sales solves all problems, right? So if you have the revenues, you have capital to run your business with, you've got ammunition to excite investors with, a lot of good things will happen from sales. So one of my favorite quotes with entrepreneurs is, it's more about the proof of concept around your product than it is about the product itself.
Yeah.
They put so much time and energy into focusing on their widget or their features and functionalities that they don't put enough time around how we can drive customers and revenues around that product.
I totally agree. And it's funny because I come from sales and marketing. Like my background has always been in sales. I grew up I went to school in finance, and I was a door-to-door kind of B2B sales, advertising sales from my first company, like just working in the hard telephone sales, outdoor door knocking. And I've always thought that there has to be an easier way, like the marketing schemes or advertising. But end of the day, people love buying from people they trust. It's relationships. And if you can really get in the door in front of people that they might not even know what you offer, but they like you and they see that you're going to actually do something. And this is how I started the company, actually, at Local SEO Search. I had no idea about SEO, but I knew there was a problem at Yellow Pages, and I could fulfill that need where I can help them get way better return online. I just have to figure out how to do it, right? So I got buy-in from my old clients saying, this is my vision, this is my goal. And I went out and just bootstrapped and did that and built my team around it and just got revenue. I've always been cash flow positive. I always grew the company. And it's like just that kind of mindset. And I've been going to these startup meetings, and they're not salespeople, or they're not even showing like they have that passion to see if there's revenue, right? Like, why would I invest in someone that won't even do anything about it, right?
Well, I think part of the challenge is most entrepreneurs fall into one of two camps. They're either a technologist that knows how to code and build some interesting piece of technology or product, or they're business people at the high level that's got a vision, right? They're visionaries that are trying to launch some new company. In neither case are they sales and marketing guys. And connecting the dots between, how much sales and marketing investment and sales team and process and creatives and all the stuff that goes into building a sales and marketing budget is going to be required to kind of hit your revenue target. They just kind of build a high level model, not realizing that a lot of work goes into driving those revenues, and they got to really think it through. Yeah. And the venture capital community, they're very focused on your cost to acquisition metrics and, how does that compare to the average order size, and how quickly are you paying back on that investment, and what's your lifetime value of the revenues? Those are the most important metrics that an entrepreneur should be focused on, and many don't have that experience.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm very fortunate that I've been doing sales all my life. So it comes second nature to me to build relationships and connect with people, right? And I find that it's very difficult for business owners who have no experience in that field, like sales and marketing, to really grow their business, right? Like, I think that's the number one thing business owners or entrepreneurs should really focus their skill set on, because you're pitching startup for funding. You're pitching your customer that idea, right? Like, go and practice, take courses and trial and error, go make mistakes, right? But that's what, failure does to you, right? Like, you have to pick yourself up if you're really committed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're raising a good point in that if you're raising capital for your business, you have to be a good salesperson yourself. So making sure you know how to get the right pitch. And, as it relates to that, I tell entrepreneurs, stop focusing on the what it is you're trying to do and start focusing on the why, right? Why does it matter to this listener? So instead of pitching your startup with all your features and functionalities and getting them excited about your product, pitch to them on how this is going to be a good return on investment for them, because they want to. That's the most important thing that they need to hear. So it's knowing who your audience is and pitching to
exactly. Figure out, but that's coming from asking the right questions, connecting with them, and then evolving throughout that presentation and pitch. Right? Like, this is where a salesperson who has done a lot of sales over the years will have a conversation, figure out what their trouble and pain points are, and then adapt to that conversation to really hit where it's gonna be like, wow, this person can really help me, right? And come out of it saying, I want to work with him. It's a matter of, it's not how much, it's when, right?
Well, and it's also about knowing who to pitch, right? Oftentimes, an early stage entrepreneur looks at all venture capital as exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I like to say, venture capital is not all the same shade of green. Right? The seed stage investor is different than an early stage investor, is different from a growth stage investor. One that likes to invest in the technology industry is different than one that likes to invest in the consumer industry, or, whatever those different variations are. So making sure you've actually done your homework on the investor you're actually pitching to make sure that your pitch will actually resonate, because you can have the greatest pitch in the world. If you're pitching it to the wrong person, it's going to fall flat.
So again, it's like know your audience, right? Know exactly who they are, what they're all about, do your due diligence, and then create a presentation or a slide or a sales presentation to that audience, knowing exactly what they want, right? It's like creating a resume to your ideal job. You know exactly those keywords that they're going after. If you don't fit that, don't even apply. But if you do, pitch it, right? Like talk about that during the interview. It's the same thing. It's really basic concepts, but people forget about it. They think about like other things that they think that matter, but ultimately you got to be clear on your vision, right? Clear and concise messaging.
But it's natural, right? The entrepreneur is excited. They're building this baby business of theirs. They want to share the story of that baby business, and they think everybody cares about this baby business. The reality is the only one that really cares about that baby business is that entrepreneur and the team. And everybody else cares about what's in it for them.
Exactly.
Right? So if you just take that mindset of it's not about your baby, it's about their baby, you'll have materially more success.
I totally agree. I mean, years of experience from you, you've seen it all, right? And I love hearing this stuff because I think I know, but I don't really know that community. But I think I'm on the right track because as a salesperson, it's like these things I've learned over the years, it still applies, right? It's like the very basic, but yet people forget about why they're doing what they're doing, right? Like, but I love this. So in terms of like advice and tips, people that are kind of just starting off, what kind of words of wisdoms would you give them, especially in your space? How can they kind of be successful? Like, what are the big things that you kind of can guide them to? Because you see a lot of failure out there, and which is fine. It's like, how do you overcome that and get better, right? Like, but what kind of things would you give them in terms of like advice?
I think the first thing would be make sure you do your homework before you get started. Sometimes entrepreneurs are so excited about getting started and jumping into something that they haven't fully fleshed out their idea and really looked at the marketplace and the competitors and figure out how big the industry is and how fast it's growing. And do you have a reasonable chance of building the size of company that will attract venture investors? So that would be my first point, is just make sure before you start running full speed ahead, take a pause, do a strategic planning process, think through what your mission is and your vision, and what do you think your core competencies are going to be, and how does that fit within the marketplace, and how are you going to block and tackle and build yourself a competitive moat and that kind of stuff before you even start, right? So they get that research work done first to make sure you have a reasonable chance of success, because that process may teach you that, oh my God, I can only build a $3 million business here, or, oh my God, I didn't realize all these big, well-funded competitors are there, and a venture capitalist is not going to want to put money into a fourth or fifth player in the space, right? So if you do your homework, that would be the most important thing to start. The second thing I would say is, we talked about it earlier, the team is everything. Right. And frankly, you want a team that's smarter than you are. So you do not want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to surround yourself by much more smarter people that have been there and done that and have the expertise and can help your business succeed, and make sure that they're motivated for success, because, they're going to be on this adventure along the ride with you.
No, I mean, you hit it on the nail in terms of like building the right team. And I've been learning this over the years because I thought I knew everything. I still think I do, but I have learned to kind of let go and say there's a lot of smarter people and I need them, because they're going to teach me way more than I am going to try to figure it out. And it saves you time, right? End of the day, it's like expediting that process. And as long as they're passionate and they love what they do and they know what they're doing, it's going to further that business and your idea and your vision to expedite that process, right? Like all these things that I've kind of thought I knew, it's like it's all coming around. Like I need to just get good people and go out, and if I don't know something, ask, and go out and find out or figure out who's the expert at that and go and reach out to them, right? What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no.
Yeah, I think it's equally important, in addition to the quality of the team and their expertise for that role, making sure too that they have the appetite for a startup, because being in a startup environment is very different. It's very unstructured, and some employees need everything buttoned up and a clear process, and that's anything but what a startup really is. So you need someone that can help you navigate and get through those growing pains, and making sure that that senior team is in fact in alignment on the vision.
Yep.
You know, in my iExplorer business, you know, we had 5 senior executives, and we all thought we were building the same company, but they were different shades of gray, right? So the CTO might have been pulling us a little bit in one direction, and our COO might have been pulling us a little bit in another direction. And our chief marketing officer might have been taking us in the third direction. The job of the CEO is to make sure we're all pulling in exactly the same direction, and there's no distractions, and we're all clear, and everybody had buy-in to that vision, so that, you know, everybody's in alignment and agreement, and you're teed up for success.
No, that's amazing. I mean, I'm slowly doing it on my business, but on a local scale, right? Running a small business, it's a lot different than trying to scale up to a tech, right? You know, getting funding or whatnot. But it's the same kind of fundamentals, I think, as a business owner running a small, you know, $5 million company, or trying to grow it to 50 or $100 million, right? It's the same fundamental things that a business owner, entrepreneur has to go through, right? Get a strong core of business, you know, people that are in different departments, IT, marketing, operations, HR, whatever it is, and make sure that whole goal and vision and mission is in alignment. Weekly meetings, clarity, and focus on slow incremental growth, not huge growth right away. Because as a business owner, I'm always talking about like that huge growth, but in reality, you have to be realistic, right?
Well, I think to put an exclamation point behind that is you can't grow faster than you can reasonably fulfill and be successful. I'd like nothing more than to scale my business from 5 million to 50 million overnight. But I'm also smart enough to know that if I did that, a $50 million business has completely different rhythm and process and skill sets that are required to be successful, that you just got to make sure you kind of walk the right road to getting there, because if you don't, you're going to disappoint your employees, you're going to disappoint your customers, and you have a higher odds of going to 0 than you do going to 50 if you try to hit the accelerator too fast and the wheels of the bus fall off.
Yeah. So I think that's so important in terms of timing and just being realistic, right? And expectations too. Like as much as you want it to grow, like be real about it, right? And as long as there's achievement and growth potential and growth, at least you're on the right track, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Make sure you're able to pivot. And as a startup, you need all these, you know, things to really keep you in line, right?
Well,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
You made this comment about being able to pivot. I mean, that is a very, very important skill set to have, right? An entrepreneur that puts on the blinders and puts their head down and thinks they know it all and is going to about ready to drive off a cliff will drive off a cliff, right? The entrepreneur that realizes what their strengths and weaknesses are and surrounds himself by voices that can help mentor them in the right direction and actually listens to that mentorship. I can't tell you how many times I've given an entrepreneur good advice based on years and years of experience that they just don't believe, or they don't think it's the right thing to do, and then they end up going out of business because they didn't make the pivot fast enough. Yeah. Now, you know, the flip side is you got to stay committed to your vision, right? You got to stay committed to that long term where you're heading. Yeah. But the road on how you get there might be different than what you think it is, and you got to be able to navigate quickly to kind of figure out where the lowest hanging fruit is.
Oh, those are great. So in terms of like, I know you mentioned, you know, when you first started your own business, there was no technology, right? Like the internet or email and all this website stuff, blogs. So how has technology changed over the years, especially in this tech startup VC space that you're in? And how has that improved for some of the stuff you're doing today versus when you started your business?
All right. Well, I think the most material changes in the dot-com boom of the 1990s, technology was expensive to build, right? You needed millions and millions of dollars of monies to put into software development and the people that were building that software. And in today's day and age, you don't need anywhere near that. You got a lot of open source software and software as a service companies that can fill in a lot of the holes for you. The price of entry is a lot lower. So instead of you needing millions of dollars to launch your business, now you need tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands to actually get a minimum viable product up and running and into the market and tested and scaling. So the good news is it needs less capital. The bad news is it's opened up the door to millions of other entrepreneurs that otherwise wouldn't have been able to launch their businesses. So the competition for venture capital is higher than it's ever been. And I'll use this example. 20 years ago, maybe a venture capitalist might have seen 200 business plans a year. Well, today, now they're looking at 2,000 business plans a year, right? And they're still making the same 5 or 10 investments, out of that fund for the year. So your odds of actually getting the money raised is a lot harder today. So to the extent you can actually build a business that can be built on a shoestring budget and you can do it yourself without requiring outside support, it's better for you because, one, you control your own destiny, and two, you haven't started a ticking clock to sell your company 5 years from now when the venture capitalist needs their exit.
Yeah. Do you find like a lot of the shows or media portrays this whole entrepreneur mindset or life to be this rosy picture? Because it seems like a lot of the younger generation where they have an idea, they put some money in and they think they know everything, right? So then they come to you for funding and you're like, it's a great idea, but who are you and why are you doing it? Like you have no experience. So the demographics, is it different today than before? Because before, I'm sure people were looking at the experience in that team, right? Today, it's hard for a younger person to have that experience in team if they've never lived it.
Yeah, sure. All right. So the demographics of your entrepreneurs today, I would say you have a couple interesting dynamics. I still think you got a wide range of ages.
Okay.
An entrepreneur in their 20s or an entrepreneur in their 50s. I still see a wide range of age ranges. Obviously, the ones in their 50s have got more career experience that they're bringing to the table. That may or may not be relevant to that particular story. Gotcha. So you still need the expertise in that particular industry or product that they're trying to build, and they might need to learn a new trick of the trade in a new way. But there's a lot more younger entrepreneurs that have a lot of confidence and in themselves that they think they can do most anything. They've been in a world where they've had an opportunity to do a lot of things. They get lots of unique experiences. And they got confidence in themselves, and they very much look at themselves equals to their peers that are in the 50s, right? So the reality is there's a very fine line between confidence and arrogance. And yes, you need to be confident, but you also need to know what your real strengths and weaknesses are. And you don't necessarily know everything. And if you can surround yourself by people that have been there and done it before, that can teach you and mentor you and shape your learnings and your trajectory, the higher odds of success you'll have.
No, that's a really good point because from what I see, a lot of the younger generation, they exclude a lot of confidence. They're very much like they have great ideas and they're very creative and they've lived in a world of technology all their life, right? They grew up with a smartphone in their hand. So they don't really know how other people live in different generations. So, and they feel like empowered. They feel like they have a lot more potential and they are able to adapt, but they don't really see how people lived before either. So it's a fine line, I guess, right? From confidence and, arrogance. I see. So.
Yeah, so I agree with that. So it's just a function of just making sure that entrepreneur, you don't want to do anything that stifles that excitement or that passion or that unbridled enthusiasm, right? But you need to maintain that while also at the same time knowing that here are holes in your own resume or your own experience set that you need to fill for you to really know the lay of the land here for you to be really successful.
No, it's great. So in terms of networking events, right? I know a lot of entrepreneurs just starting or thinking of, or has a business for 3-5 years or whatnot. What did you do much networking when you first started, and how did you go about? Was it online forums, live events, go to conferences, and what can you say about that?
Networking is mission critical for startups to have success. Because now you're bringing the power of the crowd to your story, right? You never know the 6 degrees of separation on how someone's going to connect the dots to somebody who's a potential customer for you, or a potential partner for you, or a potential employee for you, or a potential investor for you, or whatever it is. So the more you can put yourself out there, the better. I think the challenge with the early stage startups are they're so damn busy building their own businesses that they don't make the time to properly network. And that described me when I was a first-time entrepreneur in my 20s. I was so busy, heads down, trying to figure it all out that I did not make a ton of time for networking. It wasn't until later in my career that I go, God, that was really the hard way of doing this. I really should have been doing a lot more networking earlier, because the network can help me, and you're bringing the power of a lot of people's brains and success to the table.
You bring up so many good points, because over the first couple of years when I first started the company, I thought I knew everything. I didn't need to go out and meet others. And over the last couple of years, I'm like, why am I not? And now I've kind of grown, and I'm learning about, improving all my processes, having, systems in place, because for me, it's like just running a rat race, right? Trying to figure everything out. But if you see how other structures are built, and you can get some feedback or guidance or input from others that have done it, you're so further ahead than trying to figure it out yourself, and you're saving time. Ultimately.
I think part of the challenge is they don't know how to network, right? So you ask the question, how do you meet these people, right? Well, part one is, leveraging the people you know and trust and tapping into your closest relationships. That's the place to start. But not being afraid to go to a networking event where you don't know anybody. Yeah. Being able to work the room and smile and tell your story and shake hands, and good stuff will happen from there. So I love in-person events. That makes sense. Networking online, if there's people that you think can help you, they've got experience in the industry, don't be afraid to reach out to them on LinkedIn or, wherever the right place is to find them online. Leverage your advisors, your bankers, your lawyers, your accountants, whoever your professionals are that you're working with. They are very well connected people. See who they know, tap into their expertise, and good things will happen.
No, it's great. It's like spreading the word, right? Let people know that you are out there and you want help, and not be afraid of someone saying no or whatever, right? It's the same thing as sales, right? The ones that don't do anything are the ones that give up, right? The ones that's out there getting no's all day long, they're the ones that actually see movement and are hopefully doing good, right? Like achievers.
Well, I think the additional benefit is that it's like free consulting, right? An entrepreneur that is so close to their business, they're seeing it with it right in front of their face. They're in the weeds and the trenches day to day that sometimes they can't see the forest through the trees. So when you're at these networking events and you're sharing your story and you're getting alternative perspectives, it gives you a chance to catch your breath, lift your head up and look around and realize what you're really dealing with, and actually not lose focus on the long-term vision while you're down in the minutia.
Yeah, but that gives you a chance to pivot as well, right? And gives you different perspectives, gives you a way to kind of self-reflect. And it's great. I love this, because I'm starting to do a lot more networking, and it's a lot of fun, and I embrace it. I'm out there giving as much as I can, and it's just enjoying it, right? The entire process.
Well, it's definitely a two-way thing. It can't be all take and no give. So just remember, it's a two-way street. Yeah. And whatever advice you're giving, you're asking to be given to you, be prepared to give that back to somebody else, or help that partner. Let's say you're trying to get advice from a lawyer. Well, he might need a new client someday. If you know that there's another company looking for a new lawyer, and that guy helped you connecting the dots so he can, get a new client out of it, it's a two-way street.
Exactly. So in terms of what drives you today, like I know you moved to North Carolina. So
Yep.
what continues to drive you? What's motivates you? What's your passion, purpose today as opposed to back when you first started?
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff that drives me today is similar to where it was before. I still want to be associated with great, successful, high growth companies that, are on a high trajectory for success, right? So I still love the DNA of being an entrepreneur and building companies. So that part hasn't changed. The thing that's different today is I have a lot more experience today than I had 20 years ago. So I'm not as stressed out as I used to be, right? I'm not worried and panicked and living on the edge. I know that I'm going to get through it, regardless of what gets thrown my way, whether it's good or bad. I will figure it out, and I'm not gonna get into crisis mode as I used to.
Yeah.
I'm making more time for my family. Right. I mean, family is equally important to your happy and well-being as the business is. So making sure you make time for yourself is important to just clear your head and know what's really important in life. And, giving back where you can. Right. I mean, I've been fortunate in my career to be successful and had a lot of good stories to share. And I'm happy to share those stories.
No, these are really great pillars because life is not just business, right? It's more about what you learn and be curious, make mistakes, and stay a lifelong learner, right? Because failure is what, gets people rattled, but it's how you overcome those failures, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the passion and the persistence to get through those bad days.
Yeah. And even myself, like my number one thing is family, right? So the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is I love what I do, but when it comes to detrimenting time with family, my family always is first, right? I even put like in the calendar, health, go to the gym. And these are times I block off because it's really for myself, right? It allows me to like reflect as well and go through all that. But I never used to do this. And, maybe my relationships weren't as strong, but now that I have, I sleep better. I love what I do. When I'm there, I'm present, right? And that's the most important thing too. Just be present wherever you are and don't get rattled with other things on your mind, right? Let it go.
Yep, for sure. I think those are good words of wisdom.
So, but cherish every moment too, like not just big moments, but micro moments, right? And I've learned this over the years. Like I'm so grateful that I was able to work with over 5,000 local business owners, and they gave me insight. And just learning about them being an experienced business owner versus me just starting off, right? Just little pieces of wisdom, right? And I'm learning a lot from you. It's great. And, because I don't really understand your world, right? And I'm starting to get into it. And I love how you give your perspective, right? And hopefully you had fun too.
Yeah, had a ton of fun. Thank you very much for the invite, John.
Yeah. So how do listeners get a hold of you, your business, social media feeds?
Yeah, I mean, they can get me through the Red Rocket website, which is redrocketvc.com, as in venture capital. And you can catch me on LinkedIn. You can catch me on Twitter at George Deeb. And I'm happy to help anybody that has a problem.
Really appreciate all your time, George. I know you're busy. I really want to thank you for being on our show. And hopefully some of the listeners can take some of the feedback that you gave and apply it to your own business, especially if you're a startup business and looking for funding or, have a great idea.
Well, this is a great service you're providing entrepreneurs. Hopefully they become active and loyal readers of your blog and your podcast.
Well, thanks a lot, George. Definitely we'll stay in touch. But I do want to thank you for giving a lot of your great insight and valuable time.
It's my pleasure.